Last year I just did it. I shot my first narrative feature film without crew, without money. Only together with my wife, at 3 locations. I have already won 3 international festival awards in 3 entries, including Best Cinematography, Best Debut Film. I was screened at a major cinema in a huge city, and now my movie is on major movie streaming platforms, including Amazon Prime Video, and I actually make money with it. In this video I show how I did this. I go through all stages. Please stay tuned. First, the idea. I actually make movies not only because I want to make movies. I make movies because I have the urge to turn an idea into a form. This idea burns in me so much that it wants to take shape. I wanted to transform this idea into a story that stands as a symbol for that one idea. My idea was: plus attracts minus and minus attracts plus. And you know what fascinates me so much with this idea? It is in everything. Everywhere it is the same. Come on, check it out yourself. But do you want to know what even fascinates me more? That there is a unity, free from a bipolar attraction. So this idea I turned into a story. I choose a dystopian sci-fi world where a loser is visited one day by an attractive woman who wants to make him realize that he is stuck in a black and white computer game where there are only 2 types of characters, the victims, minus, and the offenders, plus. She wants to free him, but he has to first play the other character to crack the code of the game. He only can find the way out of the game, in other words out of the dependency relationship of plus and minus, by finding out who he actually is. It's nothing other than a metaphor of the dual world we live in, of the human psyche of good and bad. Second, the script. So, this story I turned into a script. My number 1 rule for script writing is: one scene leads to the next. Scene A leads to scene B, and so on. If you hold this rule consequently, then you can write a good screenplay about everything, and the audience stick until the end. Because if scene 1 leads to scene 3, and scene 2 is only for atmosphere, it fast gets boring. I also reviewed my script time by time using the concept of the hero's journey, a tried and tested system. It's important that your main character goes through a transformation, because nothing is more boring than standing still. Change is king. While writing the script, I naturally kept in mind that I only had 3 locations available. I'm convinced that you can adapt your story to different locations as long as you know your own basic idea, the pattern, without having to change it. I used to work in TV for many years on movie productions, and I had a few scripts under my belt. I never liked the standard format, so I developed a new format that worked best for me. So you don't have to go with the established model. Try to develop something that suits you best. Third, the belief I can do it. And now comes the most important point. That you actually turn your idea into a real manifestation, into your movie. The belief that you can do it. If you have written the script in such a way that you still have doubts about realizing something like this with simple means, because it is simply too enormous, then rewrite the script so that you can believe in it. It's better to do something simple but achievable than to try to do too much but not achieve it because you don't believe in it in the end. Small and fine can also be very good. Film history has often proven that. There are only 4 people in my feature film, including myself and my wife, a baker who plays a dealer, and an extra, a friend of my wife. The greater the belief in your idea, the greater the belief in the realization of the idea, the more energy you will have for your film. Believe me. Fourth, the locations. 3/4 of a year before I started shooting, I didn't know that I would be making this movie. At that time, I was on a road trip from Berlin to Portugal with my wife and our 2 children. In Portugal, we were overwhelmed by the beauty and simplicity of the country. I spontaneously made a short film with my wife. We were surprised by the shooting conditions, because there were countless epic locations for free, abandoned ruins, beautiful empty beaches in the middle of the summer, and the sun was almost always shining. When the short film was finished, I immediately wanted to shoot another one, but then my wife and I stopped and we said to ourselves, from now on, we will only shoot feature films. We are ready. We want to play in the big leagues. No, we want to conquer the big leagues like a storm.
Kamera läuft. Und bitte. Okay. Konzentrier dich an.
So in just a few days I wrote the screenplay for the black and white game about that idea I mentioned earlier that had been burning inside me for a long time. Euphoric, we flew back to Berlin, left our car in Portugal, quit our business back home, gave up our apartment, packed up all our things and moved to Portugal with one goal in mind: to shoot this movie. We rented a house and started looking for locations. I already had most of them in mind on our first trip. Now it was time to shortlist them. Here's my number 1 rule for finding easy locations that are free. Less is more. Take this example. It is a simple hill, but it looks epic because it is all about minimalism, clean lines, depth, and a wide open space. That runs through my movie. Since most of my movie takes place in a virtual world, ruins and old buildings are perfect locations. And there are plenty of them in southern Portugal. And most importantly, you can enter them, and all for free. If you want to know more about epic locations for free, check out this video of mine. Fifth, the actors. I'll keep it short. I took the male lead, and my wife took the female lead. When she was in the picture, I took over the camera and vice versa. Filmmaking can be that simple. And yes, we also won 2 awards in the Best Cinematography category. But more about cinematography later. The script is almost a 2-man play. That doesn't work for all stories. But some are just right for it. Similar to the famous play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or others. This emptiness and loneliness in my movie fits perfectly with the mysterious and dystopian computer game world in which my character finds himself. I never just try to create an atmosphere. The story does that by itself, and my story was perfect for that. If that works, it's of course all the easier when realizing a project like this, where you do almost everything your own. Nevertheless, there was one more actor, the dealer in the movie. I talk about it in this video, take a look. But in short, I met someone, a baker, who reminded me of Harvey Keitel in Taxi Driver, and I asked him if he would play the role of the dealer. He said yes. And here's my number 1 rule, what I say to amateur actors who have no acting experience and often develop the urge to overact, which can kill everything. Don't blink. Focus on one point and say the lines as broad as possible. It worked perfectly. We only shot his takes once or twice. There was also an extra, a friend of my wife. There were a few other characters in hazmat suits, but they were also played by my wife. Sixth, no crew. So again, I shot this movie all by myself with the help of my wife. And until I was able to re-up the rewards like winning awards and streaming, I didn't emphasize it too much because it could have been held against me. Why didn't I ask for help? Since it's common in non-budget filmmaking to look for volunteers. The answer is clear. I simply didn't have the self-confidence to approach others before the project. This is something I also want to achieve with this film for my future projects, because it's not my goal to always make films without a crew. I now want to have the necessary self-confidence and a kind of calling card to get people on board. With this video and with my entire YouTube channel and with the success of my movie, I just show others that you can make a good movie without a crew that is successful as an entry into the world as a filmmaker. There's a simple sentence that brings it to the point. You can produce a movie quickly, then it costs a lot of money. Or you can produce a movie without money, and it will take a long time. In both cases, there are great films and bad films. Since I did everything by myself, it was of course very time intensive. Of course, I couldn't record any sound on the set because I didn't have a soundman. That's why I did all the sound recordings in post-production. On the other hand, you are also much more flexible when you are only shooting with your wife, without a crew and a few actors.
Much better. Here's 1080p, black and white. There's 4K in color.
Wow. We shot one scene, this one, and I would say we messed it up. So it was easy to go back to the location a week later and shoot the scene a second time. We only had to call the babysitter again, watching our kids.
I'm glad that you came.
On a big movie set, everything has to be right the first time. For this scene, my wife wasn't even there. I simply filmed myself. What is everyday life for a YouTuber, I did for a feature film. I don't want to do it like that in the long term. Nevertheless, it works. There was a large flat screen under the camera that was connected to the camera so that I could control the focus. That's all. Seventh, the equipment. In this video I have already talked about my entire equipment for the feature film, which almost fits into a single suitcase. Here's something more general. Precisely because technology has developed so rapidly in recent years, we in the no-budget filmmakers have the opportunity to shoot a feature film without crew and money that looks as if money and crew are involved. I'm not going to go into the specs of the equipment because it's simply the least important thing. There are plenty of cameras that are relatively cheap and deliver excellent images. I shot my movie with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K and can highly recommend it. Check out this video, which is a kind of homage to this camera. So whether you are shooting a feature film with a Blackmagic, a Sony, a Fujifilm, or even with a cell phone, the important thing is that you know your tools. That you know what you have to set to get what you want. That's why you should have practiced a lot beforehand. If you do everything yourself, you need to have the same knowledge, not only about the camera, but also about the microphone, gimbal or tripod. A word about the gimbal. In my opinion, this little tool can replace a camera crane. It's simply brilliant. The knowledge about light and the skills as a cameraman are much more important than the specs of a camera. Using a simpler camera and a 1080p shot, but with a cinematic lighting, is much better than using a red camera 8K with poor lighting. Much better. More important are the little things which makes the difference. For the mysterious dreamy look, for example, I used a Tiffen Black Pro Mist filter on my lens, in the strength of 1/2. The choice of the lens is also important. I used through the entire film one lens. The Sigma 30mm f1.4. It has a dreamy soft look, but is also very sharp. Most of the time I stuck with the 1.4 aperture, but not always, as sometimes it was very sunny and I needed to go up to f2.8. I would not recommend switching the aperture when your movie is in color, as it will be much more difficult in post to match your colors. But my film is nearly complete black and white, so it was fine. To control the exposure, I recommend only using a variable ND filter and leaving the other settings as they are from the start. Because again, the film must have the same look from start to finish. You can fix a lot in post-production, but it's not always very easy. Eighth, lighting. If you want to shoot some kind of Dogma 95 camcorder style movie, you can skip this chapter. If not, so if you want to shoot a cinematic no budget movie, you should watch this chapter very carefully. As I explain in detail in this video about cinematic lighting, you should follow one important rule when shooting. This gives you a cinematic basis. Place the camera on the other side of the main light source. That doesn't mean you have to have a lot of silhouettes in your movie like I do, which is certainly my personal style, but the side of your actor's face that is turned towards the camera should be the shadow side. It's kind of like an unwritten cinematic law. And yes, there are always exceptions, I know. But there's something very important about silhouettes. They are always cinematic. No exceptions. And so easy to make. Therefore, if you have problems with framing because the scenery is too messy and chaotic, then take a silhouette shot and you are done, like here. For my movie, I used one Godox ML60B. It's a mobile lamp, which I can recommend a lot. This intimate scene we shot in a tiny tent without electricity, and with this lamp I could set a flickering effect that it seems it comes from the oil lamp. That means there should be always a motivation of the light, like here from the window. But it's not the natural light of the window. It would be not enough. I put here my Godox lamp SL100B with a softbox. That's all the lights I used, 2 lights with simple light stands for the complete feature film. And yes, you can see it. It looks gorgeous. For the outside shots, there was only natural light. As I was very flexible with my wife, we never shot more than 3 hours on one day, so we often could get the late evening sun, but right before the golden hour, to get the Rembrandt look in the face. At the golden hour time, the sun stays too deep for the Rembrandt face look. For me, there is a beautiful aesthetic in that small little triangle of light in the shadow part of the face. Try to avoid noon sun, when the sun is at the highest point, as you will get raccoon eyes, because the shadow falls very harsh. When I was younger, in my school days and a little later, and already dreaming of becoming a film director, I thought all you needed to become a director was an expensive camera and a connection to a film school or something. With my first short films, I only focused on the idea, on the content, which is why the films really looked crappy. It wasn't until I later had my first success with my short film The Cosmos in Me, which I made entirely from stock videos, that I had the motivation to learn everything about lighting because I wanted to make a film myself. After learning all about lighting on YouTube, I founded my film label Wunderwald to make music videos. There I gained the necessary experience and could try things out. Now I have an intuitive eye for lighting conditions and don't have to think for long and can act quickly on set. 9th, cinematography. The transition to this chapter is very smooth, because the basis for cinematography is lighting. But here we also look at framing. A simple rule here too, make it simple. Straight lines and minimalism, like I said in the chapter of locations. I always had the aesthetic eye of a photographer, why I do not use any lines for it and composition tools. But if you don't have it, you either can team up with somebody who have it, or you just follow some simple rules like the rule of thirds. As a cameraman, it is of course very important that you always think about the montage between the takes that will later belong together, especially with dialogues. If one actor's left side is open, the right side must be open for the opposite shot and so on. But these are really the simplest basics that simply have to fit intuitively and have to be tried out again and again beforehand. I think the best thing you can do to become a good cinematographer is to watch a lot of great movies from great cinematographers and see what you like best. Then you try make that out. Again, you have to learn to understand your camera from A to Z and know what you have to do to achieve what you have in mind. Only when you have a vision, you will find your own style. During our shoot, we filmed either with a tripod, static or with a shoulder tripod. The gimbal was also used, but we found it easier to film the following scenes with the shoulder tripod and stabilize them later in post-production. You can find out more in this video. I can recommend a good but very light tripod for such a type of filmmaking. I have one from Innorel made of carbon. It cost no more than 270 euros. I also use a matte box on the front of my lens. I don't use filters for this, as mine are screwed onto the lens. The main reason for the matte box for me is that I have this straight line and the shape of the framing. Instead of a round shape pointing at your subject, I have a rectangular one. This gives me a better feeling when filming. 10th, directing. What should I tell you about this? There was no crew, just my wife and I, and one other actor involved. Like I already told you in the chapter about actors, to amateur actors, I tell that they should not blink with their eyes, that they focus on one point, and even that they tell their sentences like bored. I make this to avoid overacting. With Santiago, the man who played the Belief glasses dealer in my movie, it worked awesome. Also when I'm directing my wife Tanya, it was very helpful. I think an emotion should come from feeling the moment and not from imitating it. So, actors should not act, they should feel. I don't like to tell the actors that they have to think on something bad happens to be sad, because this is simply not a good energetic. Focusing on the moment of the script Explain the feeling which has to be created instead of telling just what they have to do. Try to create the feeling. To make this, it means you have to know your script perfectly. Show the actors that you are the absolute specialist of your script. The actors, especially amateur actors, can bring amazing acting if they open their personality to you, to the director. They don't have to act, they have to be themselves, making what is in your script. That is the most authentic. But they only do so if they can trust you, so build up trust first. And one more time, to get an authentic performance, let your actors only make what is in the script. As minimal as possible. Don't tell them that they have to show a certain emotion. They will represent this emotion if they do only the action of the script. It will be much more authentic. Here's an example. In the script at the beginning of the movie, the main character, me, is following this mysterious woman, Tanya. Somehow he is attracted to her. So the only thing what the actor, me, can do is to follow the woman. That's all. If you tell to the actor he has to play a mysterious walk, showing that he is obsessed with the woman, and so on, it can be that your actor will overact, because he will not focus on the main thing, and that is to follow the woman. Everything else happens in the head of the character, but we will only see what he is doing. That is much more authentic. If someone has to open a door, let him just open the door. Don't tell him he has to open the door suspicious or sad or something like that. It is distracting from the most important. 11th, the shooting experience. And it was an amazing experience. In a lot of cases, it was much easier than expected, if you narrow it down to that what really counts, and I was prepared on it. In other cases, it was a huge challenge and very chaotic. Being in Portugal, without many contacts, having 2 little kids who sometimes could stay with a babysitter, but sometimes it was not possible and they just was nearby. Like in this scene, my daughter runs through the picture. So I used the material and make it that it looks like children on the beach, and put even realistic sound of playing kids there. I never thought I would let my children watch cartoons on the beach, but here was a good reason for it. Very often I felt hurried because this, and it was really not a professional atmosphere. But anyway, it worked all in the end. During this time I focused mostly on the film, of course, but anyway, I had to do other things for earning money, like selling clothes online, my old profession, and finding clients for my music video shootings. Of course, the attention was pretty much on the movie, so it was kind of a sacrifice season for us, but it was worth it a lot. After the 3 months, we went back to Germany, because our house was given to summer tourists for 4 times of the price, and I got clients in Berlin for making music videos. I think we will tell our grandchildren about this 3 months in southern Portugal, shooting our first feature film under really funny conditions. But anyway, we made it. And not only that, We made it really good. I just get goosebumps. 12th. The editing. After we shot a scene and come back to the house, I played the material straight onto my MacBook. In the evening, after the kids were in bed, I edited it and intuitively added sounds, so the movie grew naturally step by step. Nevertheless, there was still enough work to do after everything was shot. The film had to be set to music and sounds, and the color grading had to be adjusted. For this, I got the color grading plugin Dehancer for Final Cut. Here in this video, I make a preview about it. Check it out. I used it mainly for the plume effect, which was already slightly present because I used a Tiffen Black Pro Mist filter. But since most of the story of my movie took place in a virtual world, I wanted more of it to get the fairy tale look. Dehancer has a super realistic film grain and great film simulations. I think it's the perfect post-production tool for digital filmmakers. Dubbing the movie was fun but a lot work. I can highly recommend my Deity D3 Pro microphone for this. But like with the other gear, there are a lot of other good stuff out there, which is affordable. For me as a filmmaker and storyteller, it is essential to make the final cut, even if I work with a team later on, because it tells the story visually and is one of the most important steps in the realization of my vision. In general, I can say I love the step of editing, because then the manifestation of my film is complete. Goosebumps again. 13th. The festivals. After everything was done, I uploaded the movie to filmfreeway.com and researched festivals that suits my movie. But first I made the mistake of categorizing my film in the sci-fi genre and applied for 3 sci-fi festivals. I got 3 rejections and was disappointed. But then I realized that although I had a sci-fi setting, the genre is not really sci-fi after I researched the films that were shown at these 3 festivals. They were more or less blockbusters with horror movies. My art house movie wouldn't have fit in there. So I did better research and put my film in the art house suspense genre. And it worked very well. It's worth mentioning that Tanya was among the top 5 supporting actresses out of 909 films. So until now it wins all festivals which it enters. In Moscow my film was also shown in a nice cinema to an audience. There are 3 more open applications and hopefully 3 more prizes for my movie. 14th. The distribution. After I won the first 2 festivals, I got those laurels and started to make the film ready for streaming distribution. I came across the self-distribution platform FilmHub, where you keep 100% of the right of your work and they list your movie in a catalog where all major streaming platforms have access to, besides Netflix, which is separate. They get 20% of the revenue, which sounds very fair to me. In FilmHub, your movie has to go through the quality control. You have 3 attempts for that process. Be sure to use all fields when filling out the form. Make a music cue sheet and upload all rights. On another YouTube channel, I watched an interview from the CEO of FilmHub who shared some important tips. 2 of them I would like to share here, which make a lot sense to me. First, your artwork must be minimal and professional. People from the platforms will see first, and also the people who want to watch your movie. If you don't have graphic design skills, find someone who does. FilmHub even offers this as a service. I made it by myself. Second, after the film has been added to the catalog and a streaming channel has chosen it, you have to promote it yourself. Through ads or content creation or social media, preferably everything. Only a few days after I was added to the Film Hub catalog, the first deal came in, Amazon Prime Video. That was the next step for me. Now the movie is on the market. Shortly after that came the next streaming service and hopefully more soon. Now I'm running the first ads on my movie and the first watches come in and I start to make money with it. I still have one more thing to do. I want the movie to be shown one day or another in a nice arthouse cinema. But that's the next step and I have no doubts about it. Actually, the theatrical release is scheduled before the streaming, right after the festival circuit, but here I choose it that way because I decided to go for the easier marketing via streaming, given the small scale of this film. For my next films, however, it's clear that I want a theatrical release. 15th. Mistakes. The only possibility of development is making mistakes, because only then you can improve. Of course, you should try and practice a lot beforehand to avoid really amateurish mistakes. I did this and made them in music videos and short films, so I learned from it and did not make them in my feature. But anyway, it was my first feature, and there is still so much to improve. Check this scene. Do you see this car? It's not coming out here, but at least it is not a big mistake. 16th. Conclusion.
Action!
I only can say one thing. If you burn for an idea, if you want to make a movie out of it, go for it. There is nothing what can hold you back. Nothing. No money, no crew, no matter. Simply do it. It will lead you somewhere.
Okay. Und Bauch atmen. Und Action.
Warte.
Ich mache immer mal so, ja?
Yeah. It really happened that way.
Would I do it again? Yes, of course. At this stage, definitely. It was the best decision. But now I have to move forward and develop. Having at least a small crew for my future feature film would be the next step. If you want to see my movie, check out the streaming link under the video. Here you can see the trailer for my movie. I hope to welcome you back on my next videos. Be a part of my journey becoming a filmmaker. Thanks and see you soon.